closely here. Record on computer. Yes, so this meeting is going to be recorded. So I started to say that I wanted to let everybody know the link to our YouTube channel, the Tech for Good South of Florida YouTube channel. And on the bottom is a bubble in the buttons, and you see chat there. So I'm going to put this in the chat, the link in the chat, so you can grab that. And another one is, so that's the YouTube channel. And the other one is the list of online technology training, webinars, and courses that are for the nonprofit technology realm. Yeah, I collect events from about 12 providers, among them TechSoup and N10 and Cherry to How To, and yeah, all kind of tech impact, community network or something like that. So there's another link where you can look them up. And it has, when you go there, you can also subscribe to the Google Calendar. So those events come into your separate Google. So if you have a separate Google Calendar, you can kind of overlay them on your own calendar and pick the spots that you wanted to, that you find attractive. There's also a Tech Forward conference coming this month, September 15th. With a half a day of main stage topics and also workshops. And the link is also on that particular page, but I can give them separately. Copy image, no, copy link address. So that's the Tech Forward conference. Yeah, all right. That's all I have. I'm sorry we can't meet in person. When we started this virtual series, in March, we had hoped to be back, but not yet. And I think we will kind of close out the year with virtual events. So thank you for all for coming. And I hand this over to Donna. Donna did a phenomenal job putting this event together. Thank you for that. And now I turn it over to you.
Welcome, everyone. We have an outstanding panel this evening who are going to talk about grants. And we've kind of, through discussions before the meeting, put together questions we think are most pertinent. What we're going to ask, I will introduce the panel in just a second. What we're going to ask is that you open up the chat on the side and put your questions in there as we go. And we will have like 20 minutes at least. If we need to run over 7:30 to answer all the questions, we'll do that. So at any rate, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves alphabetically. So we're going to start with you, Susan Golden.
Oh, alphabetical by last name, not first name.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Susan Golden. I work for Collier County Government in the Community and Human Services Office, and I've been involved in grant stuff since the 90s. So most of the grants that we handle at the county are funds that come from the state or the federal government, and we'll talk more about that as we go farther along in the process.
Okay, thank you, Susan. And then we have Bernice. I'm going to let you pronounce your own last name because you have such a way of doing it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, if you could speak up a little bit.
Okay, I'm Bernice Kertavage. It rhymes with Savage. My mother always hated when I said that, but it's Kertavage. I'm with the Southwest Florida Workforce Development Board. I've been with the board for almost 20 years now. We're the administrative entity of the one-stop centers in Florida, our regional centers, under the does business as the DVA, Curacao, Southwest Florida.
Thank you. And then we have Gloria Moorman, Gloria Luna Moorman.
Yes, so Gloria Luna Moorman, and I'm the Director of Development for RCMA based out in Immokalee. We're a statewide nonprofit organization. We provide child development services to the children of primarily agricultural workers. Our state office is in Immokalee, and here in Collier County, we have 6 child development centers and a charter school. So in addition to child development services, we also have a charter school K through 6th grade that we're looking forward to expanding. I've been working for nonprofits for more than 20 years. It's my passion, and I just hope that I can, share anything with you that I've learned over the years.
Great. And our 4th panelist is Laura Simmelink. Oh, turn your, there you go.
My name is Laura Simmelink. I'm the Senior Director of Programs with the Community Foundation of Callier County. I joined the Community Foundation about 1.5 years ago after spending my whole professional career in development with nonprofits. So I've been on the grant seeking side many, many times for many years. I've also sat on different grant making committees and councils before this position. The Community Foundation of Callier County supports nonprofits in Callier County. My specific role there is to manage our community impact grant making. We manage several hundred donor advised funds and I think over 70 scholarship funds. Last fiscal year, we granted $35 million and provided over $1 million in student scholarships. Thanks for having me.
Wow, glad to have you. This is going to be outstanding. We put together some pretty serious questions and we're going to jump right in. And this is Gloria's question. Let's assume that we have a wonderful organization responding to a community need and are in need of funding. Where does a nonprofit begin their grant writing journal?
And so, starting at the beginning, I wanted to just take an opportunity to talk a little bit about research, particularly right now with COVID and the limitation of face-to-face meetings and that kind of thing. So if a nonprofit is looking to start the journey, the internet is such a wonderful place to start. There's such a wealth of information. We talk about websites, and sometimes website is so fantastic, particularly for funders. Funders are often will list their staff, and they will list board members and foundation, folks who are on their board. So when you're on a funder's website, be sure to look in and find out who the staff are. And then also don't forget to look who the trustees are and who the board members are. Do you recognize anybody among those folks? And then what are they connected to? It's always really helpful to know if there are staff or board members who connect with your organization's mission in some way. Aside from getting to know staff, it's also really helpful to be crystal clear about what the funder's mission is. And the website is often a really great place to find that. Understand, who some of the organizations are that they funded in the past. Grantees will tell you a whole lot about future grantees. So if your mission has nothing to do with the type of work that a funder has been supporting in the past, then that may not be the first funder in your priority list. You want to find funders who somehow connect to your organization's mission. So know who the people are, and also be very crystal clear about the funder's mission and funding priorities. Another really helpful place to look is on that website is their financial statements. Now, sometimes it's really very clear, here's, about us financials, and sometimes it's not so clear. Sometimes you have to go through the sitemap, but I tell you all private foundations are required to submit a 990 and then report on financials so that it's easy to find. And so, you know, look for those financials. A lot of times organizations will have, you know, multiple years of financial statements. And so really important to look for assets, net assets, how much funding does an organization have available. That'll tell you quite a bit. And then also look to see how many organizations they've funded in the last year. So putting those together will give you a sense of, okay, how likely is it that my organization is going to be able to compete with all the other organizations? You'll get a sense of over the years, are there assets increasing, and is there giving increasing, or is there their giving decreasing? That'll tell you a lot as well about how well you can compete with other worthy organizations out there. So lots of information available through financials, and then of course the grant. Their grant programs. Be really clear about grant programs. Start, you know, immediately looking at deadlines. What programs do they offer, and what are their deadlines? And that'll put you in a really good place to even start the outreach, even before you put the email together, before you make the phone call. Be really clear about, you know, focus, because time is so precious that you want to prioritize those organizations that you have the best chances of creating a relationship with.
Further comments from the other panel members?
I thought you did a great job, Gloria.
Yeah, I think so too.
And, that's all correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Very
I was thinking 990 is an outstanding. Every foundation has a 990 that you can have access to, and that will give you most of that information. So Susan or Bernice?
It's a waste of time if your mission statement and your action plan does not match theirs. Do not waste your time. Find funders who have the same passion you have, and go to their action page, their mission statement, and move on if it does not match. You know, save your time, save their time.
And I think that's a good point, Bernice, because if you're with an arts or a music organization and you're searching for a number of new funding sources, don't focus on somebody whose priorities are education or housing or parks and recreation, because if what you're proposing doesn't match their mission and their priorities, they're not going to consider your application. So you do need to do a lot of legwork up front.
And if it looks like it might match, it may be that you need to adapt what your project is, as long as you're still in the scope of services. If you're not in that scope, again, move on. But if you can somewhat match their feeding or their hunger, you know, they want to end hunger. Yes, if that's what you're doing as a service, and it's your service is very focused and theirs is broad, you might be able to adjust your program description, or contact their technical advisor to see if you have a chance. But you know, you have to fit their mission.
And just a couple of things that I would add. There's lots of grant software where you can search for grants. And I believe that Donna is going to share with you all later kind of a list of resources. And so we've included a couple of those services on there, including some that are of no cost to nonprofits, to 501c3 organizations. So that should be helpful. And I lost my second point, but I'm sure it'll come back at another point.
It will, and I'll share the list of resources. It'll be out in an follow-up email tomorrow. So look for that follow-up email, which will also include a link to the video of this whole session. So any other comments? Okay, the next question, question 2, this is Susan will start this round. What types of supporting documentation does the county typically require when a nonprofit is requesting federal, state, or local grant funds?
Okay, the list of supporting documentation that our office is going to require may differ greatly or just to some extent from what Laura's programs at the Community Foundation might require or a private foundation. But most of the governments are going to require basically the same kinds of things. There's a number of governmental forms that you need to have. You need to have a DUNS number, D-U-N-S. You need to have a SAMS registration before you can have any money provided to you that comes through the state or federal government. You need financials. Sometimes the financials might be your last 6 months of bank statements or 3 months of bank statements. You might need profit and loss documents. A lot of governmental entities will request maybe the last 2 or 3 annual audits that your organization has had. So if you've never had your nonprofit programs audited before, you need to kind of think about that before you try to get into the queue to apply for some of the federal programs. Some of the other things, you need a SunBiz registration from the state of Florida. Let's see, maybe copies of your operating license, a certificate of good standing with the state of Florida, maybe again, proof of a business license with Collier County government. Again, it will vary a little bit from agency to agency, but even with governmental entities, you need to make sure that whatever you're requesting is matching up with the priorities, the national objectives that we need to follow as far as the funding source is concerned, whether it's federal money, state money, whatever. Our annual cycle starts in January of every year. So Collier County government will open up an application cycle in the beginning of January. It will typically close about 5 weeks later, sometime in early mid-February. When you're looking at our process, we actually have a separate guide to how to fill out the grant application forms. And what you need to understand is that in particular with our HUD, which is Housing and Urban Development Grants, our priorities may be far afield from what your organization is looking for. Some of our priorities might be affordable housing development, providing some type of public service. So we may fund anything from an after-school program to legal aid, providing attorneys to represent families in either domestic violence or immigration issues. We may fund a request for transportation for somebody, but all of the applications that we fund have to serve a low mod population. So we also need the organizations that we're working with to be able to track who their beneficiaries are and provide the necessary documentation that, 75% or 100% of their services are benefiting low-income families, or they're creating housing for lower moderate income families, or providing new sidewalks in a low-income neighborhood. So it really does depend on whether or not we are a good match for you. I do encourage a lot of nonprofits to take a look at our application cycle, because we tend to fund 3 or 4 what HUD calls public service activities every year. So one year we might fund Boys and Girls Club, the Children's Advocacy Center, the Cerebral Palsy Group. I'm trying to think, legal aid we fund through public service. But there are other things that we fund that are still tied to nonprofits. So we fund the Shelter for Abused Women and Children. We provide them operating money because we have federal dollars called ESG, Emergency Solution Grants, that are targeted to homeless populations. So typically we will also fund 3 or 4 organizations that are doing feeding programs or case management or housing homeless individuals, that sort of stuff. So there'll be a lot of information available on our website in January when that application cycle opens up.
Cool. Comments from Bernice? You have a smile on your face.
Well, the board of directors, keeping a list of your current board of directors, I have a file that I update, I'm going to say quarterly, maybe twice a year. You know, the board of directors, the audits, the done information, but the entity, everything is either on in a file on my PC, and I have physical. So if I have to scan everything real quick, because sometimes during a hurricane, we have to quick do emergency grants. So if you keep that information up to date all the time, you're ahead of the game.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the other, and I think that's really important, Bernice, because some of the other things that we typically will request is a list of your board of directors. There's a certification about conflict of interest that needs to be signed. We also ask for a resolution that your board has passed so that you as the development director or the executive director or whoever it is has documentation showing that you've been authorized to submit that grant. And it's just very helpful if you do that once a year and then you just keep that resolution on file. And same with your list of board members. Just keep it updated because you will need that for some of the grant applications that you'll be submitting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So at the Community Foundation, we don't require nearly the same amount of documentation that the government does. We will require, a board of directors list. I have dialed the requirements way back because we have relationships with most of our grantees, and if we don't, I try to build it prior to funding. But there's this article called Drowning in Mountains of Paperwork, and how much paper do we ask people for, and what do we do with it, and what do we really ask for in terms of reporting. So I've been dialing it way back, and I created a super simple, I think it's simple, organizational budget template and a program budget template. I no longer ask for audited financials. If I want to see them, they're usually on websites, or I can just email and ask for it. But the beautiful thing about a community foundation is we don't have a lot of the same requirements as government. And we have this relationship. And so once we build it, we know and trust our community partners. And not that the government doesn't, they just have different things they have to satisfy than we do. And we also hear a lot of information. So if there's been an issue around fiscal mismanagement or embezzlement or exceptionally high turnover, we usually hear about it pretty quickly. Organizations love to tell on each other. So then I can reach out and ask for some follow-up. But I generally have we've dialed it pretty far back on what we ask for to reduce the burden on nonprofits. Of course, Gloria submitted grant proposals. She may differ with that, but I'm still working on dialing it back.
Yeah, and then I would just say that every funder will have a little bit of a different approach to the documentation. So we have a folder called Common Documents, and so we're ready for whatever the need is. It's absolutely lovely when, a funder, says, send us your proposal, and it's so simple. But to be ready for the more complex process, so having all your ducks in a row so that you don't miss out opportunities as they come along, it'll make life so much easier, because if you really are shopping around and getting going and building relationships, it's likely you're going to be applying to different types of foundations, and each one has such a unique process. So you'll have to get to know what their process is.
That's right. And you also may find it all helpful to create a document that, when I was a proposal writer, I used to call kind of a case study. And it broke a narrative into different sections that are commonly found on most grant applications. And so if you have that in your Common Documents file and you keep it updated, then every time you submit a grant proposal, you're not sort of madly hunting for your updated outcomes. And let's say your educational program, what were the scores of the students? So you just keep that updated, and then by and large, you can copy and paste from that into most grant applications, and it will save you from having to write those sections over and over and over.
That's an excellent point. I put together for one of my clients a thesaurus that starts out with your history, how you measure things, just basic points that almost every foundation asks for. So, and Janelle Miley has noted, in addition, board minutes may also be required. She recommends that all corporate documents and financial documents be housed on a cloud-based application, for example, like Dropbox or something like that, where you can access it. More than one person can access it, which is a good point. Any other comments on? Okay, we'll go to question 3, which I have already here. And this is Laura's question. Would you please discuss the importance of a grant seeker building the relationship with a funder and describe the best way to approach that?
Well, it's very important. When I was writing grant proposals, I can't underestimate the importance of reaching out to a funder and building the relationship well in advance of when you want the funding. And it's generally not successful to submit an application where you've had no prior communication with a funder. So I welcome communication from grant seekers. The first thing I hope people do will be to read our website and read the studies that are available on the website. We have the community needs assessment that we co-funded with the Schultz Foundation. There's now a 5-year mental health and substance abuse strategic plan for the county. There is now a arts and culture strategic plan for the county. So there's all sorts of studies. And so whatever focus area you fit into, it's important to kind of read that research and studies so that you come to the conversation armed with the knowledge of where your organization and your programs fit into the big picture and the gaps that you fill in the services that you bring that are so vital to the community. And so in your first conversation or any conversations, always, I think, start by checking with the funder to see what their focus area is. Gloria talked about this, and it's really important because, why waste your time and theirs if their focus area doesn't align? And then you can share how your work fills those gaps and meets those needs in the community. And it's best to not reach out like the week before the grant cycle closes. That tends to be, for me, when I get really overwhelmed and I might not be able to give someone the time. and everyone's kind of in panic and rush mode at that point, including me. So, you know, I always appreciate it if a new grant seeker, potential grantee reaches out like even a month before the cycle opens, or just at any time throughout the year to share work. And, you know, come to that meeting prepared. Know what your operating budget is. Know what your line items are. Know how your organization spends its money. Know what your outcomes are. You know, have all that information at hand. So if the funder says, how many board meetings do you have a year? You know. I mean, someone recently made an appointment with me and I asked what their annual operating budget was. And this is a pretty good sized organization. And she wasn't aware. Now, granted, she was new, but she'd been there for 2 months. And so it's kind of hard for me to have a discussion about an appropriate grant and she also wasn't aware of how many people the program served and what all of their services were. So that is an example of not coming to a conversation and doing a great job of building the relationship by being prepared. So just, you know, in closing, reach out, sending an email of introduction, sending some times you might be free for a phone call or a meeting, and then coming to that meeting or that phone call really well prepared with all your information that you should have in that file that Gloria mentioned of all your common documents, and then staying in touch and asking for some feedback on appropriate amounts to request or appropriate grant cycles that are a good fit. And I'm sure that others have feedback on this as well.
Yeah, so I would just, you know, I don't think I could emphasize enough how important that relationship with your funder is, and that it's based on, you know, integrity and you know, honesty and sincerity. All those things you know, are so important. And as you know, Laura's sitting here, all these folks are sitting here, you know, every foundations hire people who have a passion for mission and helping others, and so, you know, to not be intimidated to reach out to funders, and I'll also emphasize the not reaching out to build the relationship right before the deadline of a grant cycle. Often I will you know, advocate for, let this grant, if this is a new funder for RCMA, let's not apply this year. You know, the relationship is so important that it gets started off on the right foot, that that getting to know the funder and, you know, off cycle and say, hey, let's get together for just an orientation. You know, I want to learn about your priorities, and I want to share about, you know, my organization's work. And so it really is, you're getting to know that person outside of the pressure, outside of the expectation of being funded. Again, the being clear about the mission, all of that. Funders are people, you know, and they care about making a difference. And so coming to them with a good idea, a lot of times funders will help you improve your project and improve your organization. So that's my perspective when a funder comes back and has a lot more questions about a proposal I may have submitted. I don't see it as an annoyance. I don't see it as anything negative. I see it as like, well, this obviously my project was not, I didn't communicate it clearly enough, or there's some really good questions that I need to think about that will make my project successful. And so that's what funders are there for, is to help you have a successful project, because they don't want their investment to flop, right? They want to invest in successful organizations, and those questions and that whole process is there to make sure that you're successful. And so when you approach, you know, funders from that perspective, that we're all in this together, and we're all trying to make a positive impact in our communities, it makes building that relationship a lot more productive, and know that it's for the long term. So just because you either got funded or didn't get funded, keep keep in touch with your contacts. And again, they're real relationships. Just steward those relationships, get to know the people, and let them get to know you. Because the other thing I would say is being vulnerable is okay, especially if you're outside of a grant cycle. You know, bring an issue or vulnerability, something that you're having trouble with, and a lot of times that might uncover an opportunity for funding. That might uncover an opportunity for, hey, you know, a lot of folks have that same kind of vulnerability. So maybe this is something we need to look to. I think funders are looking to find the gaps, and the only way to do that is through sincere dialogue and communication, which is based on trust and relationship building.
If I could just have a second. I thought the word Gloria used, integrity, is wonderful. In my line of work, we have state and federal funds, and we do quarterly reporting as to how progress is serving our customers. And of course, just recently, it's hard to have an apprenticeship program because school is out. You can't have a work experience or workplace experience because of certain situations. And as soon as that happened, we contacted the people who were overseeing the grant and said, these are the problems, this, you know, they no longer have class, they no longer have this, we're going to be doing this online through this service, and it was not at all on our grant. You know, if you have a problem, at least have one or two solutions. If you go there with I want to say a kind heart, saying, this is what we're doing on behalf of our customers. You know, we want to provide service, but this is our workaround. A lot of times they give you the positive nod. It might not be at all related to how you wrote your grant, but it's how you're solving your problems. And problems happen weekly, monthly, every report cycle. So you have to have good communication, and you have to have integrity with your reports and your contacts with the grantor.
Cool. Susan, do you have a comment? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Nothing that I can think of to really add. I think everybody hit on some really important points in the process. And again, it's just all about communicating, because if you're approaching somebody for the first time, they don't know anything about your programs and what you've been doing, even if you've been running your operation for 10 or 15 or 20 years. So you do need to have just a really good, a basic elevator speech kind of thing that, that you're ready to talk to folks about. And I like the idea of approaching some of your current funders with the problem that you're encountering, especially now during this time of COVID, because things that we thought would happen and services that we expected people to be able to provide aren't necessarily happening now. And in some cases, maybe you had 12 months to expend whatever the grant was that you received. Well, again, in the time of COVID, reach out to the grantor, because you may be able to extend that or reprogram those dollars to provide something else that you need, whether it's PPE or something that is going to help ensure that those students that Bernice was talking about in a training kind of program, that you're keeping your clients and whoever it is that you're working with and for, you're keeping everybody safe. So again, as Gloria and Laura said, the communication is just really critical to make sure people know what's going on. Don't be embarrassed or ashamed that you're not going to meet that targeted goal, because none of us predicted we would be where we are right now 6 or 9 months ago. So you just have to communicate and let people know what's going on.
Good point. Good point.
I
Okay.
just wanted to add one little thing. Hi, everyone. I'm Janelle Miley. This is the first time that I've participated with the group, and this is some valuable information for nonprofits. Years ago, I was working with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the organization that I was working with had been working over 2 years in developing a relationship with the Gates Foundation.
Yeah.
And so one day they called out of the blue to this nonprofit and said, listen, we haven't spent everything in our budget. We have $5 million. Can you turn around a grant in the next couple of days, a proposal to us in the next couple of days? And of course, the organization immediately did that. So two things there. Develop those relationships, just like everyone else said, because that's important, because you want that organization to think of you when there's money that can be given out or funded to an organization. But two, be prepared to respond. Make sure you have all of your documentation. Make sure you know what that funder's initiatives are, so that you already have documents that are already prepared. And all you have to do is a little wordsmithing, and you can turn around and get it to them.
Yeah, that's a great point, Janelle. One of the other sources that often will have some money left at the last minute might be your local bankers. They've got some CRA dollars, Community Reinvestment Act dollars, that they have not spent yet, and they've got maybe 30 days to get those dollars out on the street before they start their new fiscal year. So there may be opportunities like that come through a foundation like Janelle was talking about, a local lender that you have a relationship with, or again, even your local government. Our office has probably had $75 million in CARES Act funding, 75 to 80 million, that's either in the process of coming into our office, or we already have the commitments. And with some of those dollars, they have to be spent by the end of December of this year. Other funds don't have to be spent for 3 years or 6 years. But there'll be times where we'll be scrambling to try to get money out into the community. And again, as everybody's stated, if we've already got a working relationship with you, it'll make it that much easier when we send out an email blast or whatever it is, to say you've got 5 days to submit an application.
Also, your local, well, I would say your representatives in government, your state senator, your state representatives, as well as at the federal level, sometimes they have little pockets of money that they set aside just for the community, or they have leftover fundraising campaign money that, and it's sometimes, so building a relationship with your representatives and Congress people is actually, when I worked in Toledo with the Urban Affairs Center, if we had a little project, we had something we wanted to get off the ground and we didn't need much money, I would call Marcy Captor's office and say, hey, do you have any money? And a lot of times they did, because they trusted the organization I worked for. And they could always come up with anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 to help get something off the ground. So those are the kind of, talking about relationships, they're all over the place. So, okay, I'm gonna go on to the final question, question 4 that we have. And then Duke, you have a question. I think we'll address that after this question. Is that okay? Okay. So question 4, and this is, we'll start with Bernice, and this is a long one. What is the best way to answer the question about impact in 250 words or 1,000 characters or less? How do I tell them what they want to hear? Where do I get the information about my organization that the grantor needs? How do I best describe the proposed services when they know that there is so much need? And believe it or not, all these questions come from different directions, but I think Bernice has a good answer. Oh, unmute, unmute. Bernice, unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
So sorry. It's the problem I had at the very beginning because I was going to do my elevator speech to introduce myself. And within seconds of Susan's finishing her introduction, I was up. So I apologize for that. But I'm going to show you what my elevator speech is. And I adjust this, whoever is in my audience. Whether it is, because I'm in planning and grants with the Southwest Florida Workforce Development Board, and before that, I worked for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I work obviously in state and federal grants. So my background is much different, but impact. And of course, when I first thought 250 words, but my elevator speech with this is 150 words. And not that it's a correlation, but what is your impact? When you get into an elevator with somebody, you have 30 seconds, 60 seconds to tell what your action is, what your passion is. And that's the same thing in written words. You succinctly tell whomever what you're going to be doing, what your agency is, what your mission is, and do it in 250 words, 1,000 characters. Get on Microsoft Word and there's a count. If you're not sure what your count is, and you continually keep those. I have, at least on my PC at work and all of my jump drives, I think I might have 1,000 impact statements. And my impact statements are usually 2,000 words, only because I do federal and state grants. But I could really edit that down. And the impact is your call to action. Look at your agency's mission statement. If you are trying to end hunger in Collier County, obviously you're not going to go for a grant on apprenticeship. You stick with your mission, you build your impact statement. We will serve 250 families on a weekly basis for 3 months, and it will cost this much. Boom. A very short statement. People know what you're going to do. I always say it's the who, what, where, and why of your agency. Who's going to be affected? Who's going to receive the services that if this grant is awarded to your agency? What is going to be happening with this funding? You know, you're going to spend $3 per person per bag, you'll have whatever. That's the what. Quickly, it's not the how. How is your program description? But how the services will affect your customers. The where. If you're doing it in East Naples, I'm doing it in all of Southwest Florida, which is 5,449 square miles, which is comparative to Connecticut. And I say that in all of my grants. People who read my grants for the last 20 years know I'm in Southwest Florida. When I was in Pennsylvania, they also knew that it was 12.9 million people who are going to be being served, on and on and on. You build your punchline and your elevator speech with the quick description and the why. Why is the grantor giving you that money? This is your passion. And it could just be 1 or 2 sentences because that might be the amount of words you have. Write it. I always, and people laugh at me, I could write a novel. I get to do 25 pages of grant. And as soon as it starts, I just start writing. My proofreader said I probably am T.S. Eliot in a former life. I just go on and on and on. But that's how you build your grant and your quick, concise, you pull it out, you edit. And again, when it comes to the other questions, besides the impact, how do you tell them what they want to hear I think all the ladies ahead of me said, you do your research. Who are you asking money from? What is their mission? Does your mission and their mission match? Then you will be telling them exactly what they want to hear. And you're going to do it quantitatively. The 250 people a week, a month, whatever. And then you're going to talk about quality. You know, why you're better than the ABC down the street. And not that there's a competition, but you will be collaborating with ABC because they don't do East Naples, they do Golden Gate. I'm making up geography, and on and on and on. So you're building your collaboration. That's why you're going to be the best one to administer this grant opportunity. And, you know, look at your mission statement, and maybe you need to tweak it. But if all of that is up to date, and like I said, I do this on a quarterly basis, sometimes, you know, more often as things change. All of our different programs have different outcomes. And what do they want to hear? They want to hear how you're going to report it. You know, you will just ask people to sign off on things. You'll collect all those signatures so that you know that it's 250 families. I'll keep using that same example. But right now, I think it's necessary. And where do you get the information that the organization needs? We talked, I mean, I think that Susan did a fabulous job about all of that, but what do they need? They need to boast about what they did with their money. If they're giving you $500,000 or $5,000, they need to boast how well they spent their money. It's the ROI. You know, what is their return on the investment? And they want to put that in their annual report. And they want to also say how great they were giving you this money and how great the service was. That's the information they need when you write a grant. And how do you best describe the proposed services? Well, I always say succinctly. You do it really quickly because later on when you have communication, because something happened, you know, the bank closed down or the church, you know, had to re-asphalt the drive-through or whatever the situation is, things will change. So if you do it short and sweet and you tell them, we need to adjust this. If you're overly descriptive, you are locking yourself in. So I hope I answered those questions as best as everybody needs them to be, but I think that if you are able to provide the information and tell them that through reporting, you will provide this information, the grantor will be more likely, if they don't already tell you what they want, but you can tell them extra information that you'll report so they do have a right to brag about what you're doing on their behalf.
Cool. Laura, do you have anything to add?
I think Bernice's remarks are just right on target, and brevity is key, being succinct and communicating really clearly. I would say if you've received a grant, follow up with the funder outside of the normal report cycle and just very, very briefly, succinctly share a success story. Because when our grantees do that, I often forward it to our marketing director who says, great, I'll feature it in next month's newsletter. That is like free marketing, guys. And then I'll also say, I know you want to communicate everything that you do, but you have to keep in mind that funders are reviewing sometimes hundreds of proposals at once. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is that you communicate what you really need to communicate without them getting lost in the details, because sometimes I can get really lost in someone's narrative and I'm having a hard time extracting the essence of what they do or the numbers that they served, like Bernice said. So try to be really succinct. It'll make your proposal more likely to get noticed, and you actually never need to use an adjective. If you make your case well and you state the gap or the need that you're meeting, and you state your numbers, you'll make such a compelling case that you do not need to use adjectives. And adjectives just fill up unnecessary space on a grant proposal. When you've got 250 words, you better make every word count. And using words like terrible and devastating and horrible doesn't really tell us much. But if you tell us that 75% of this community lives below the federal poverty level, and you go on with statistics like that, that tells us the story that we need to hear to make a decision.
Cool, cool.
And I love charts.
Oh,
and I know I sound crazy, but only because I do different counties or the region or through the state. A quick chart that someone could read really quickly, and if you have a chance to have an attachment so you can use 1,000 more words to explain that chart, whether it's neighborhoods or zip codes or census blocks, how much effect there is. Yes, we know there's need, but a quick chart is only so many words, and people see its punch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The only other thing I would say, because what Bernice has said and what Laura has said, brevity, specific numbers, and donors want to see how they've changed lives. They want to know, okay, how's my money making an impact? How's it changed the world? How's it changed my community? How has it changed a life? And and a lot of times, even the foundations, they have donors, people who give them the money that they have. So they want to share those stories. I think an impact statement that doesn't share, how lives have been changed and what differences are made is missing a critical piece. And so in our communication, and I tell you, we practice all the time, right? We get better all the time. We're constantly, hearing, okay, are we communicating to our donors, and then listening to donors, right? Do you understand how you're changing a life, and making sure that they feel that they are making a real difference, that their funds are making a real difference in the community.
That's right. And that's where building that relationship with the funder can come in prior to the proposal, because if you've shared that, then when they read the proposal, it's like their reminder, but they already know how you're changing lives. And when I mentioned that, it's great if an organization sends a little follow-up just saying, thanks for the grant, we used the funds, and because of the gift, we were able to help, Maria, and then they'll share the story of Maria. And then those are the stories that I share with our marketing director. Our donors love to see. Gloria is absolutely right that donors want to know they're making a difference. So that's what we communicate to our donors. But in grant proposals, you can be pretty brief and straightforward, unless there's room for a story.
Susan? Unmute. Yeah.
I don't really have much to add, but I did appreciate hearing Bernice talk about her proofreader. One of the things that I have always found to be beneficial, especially if you're writing a grant to a potential funder and it's the first time, you have to assume that they don't know anything about your organization. And so you've got to lay it out, as everybody said, as succinctly as possible. But I've also found it helpful, whether it's a coworker or somebody else, actually reviewing some of the narrative in a grant application or in a white paper or whatever the document is. Because if it makes sense to a layperson, if they really understand your mission and what your focus is, what your successes have been, that kind of stuff, then hopefully it will be easy enough to understand for the funder, and hopefully a readable type of document. But I do think it always helps to have a second pair of eyes sometimes reviewing your grant applications before you actually hit submit.
Good point. I always do that. You know, sometimes it's just catching a little grammar error, you know,
Right.
something that's gonna,
Right.
you know, if someone is reading it, it's gonna catch their eye, and you don't want those kind of errors in your proposal.
Or checking your math. Make sure you double check your math. If you've prepared a project budget, but it's out of whack, you don't want to submit that. You need to make sure, again, whether it's you as the grant writer or some coworker or someone else, you have people double check that stuff. This is your first opportunity to make a first impression, and you want to make sure you're on target and everything is as good as it can be.
And I always try and help people find what their keywords are. I know I just picked on feeding and hunger, but your agency has keywords. Ours are employment, collaboration, you know, I have 1,000, but when a grantor reads your grant proposal, your keywords should match what their keywords are. And whether you're using eCivis or whatever resources that are out there, oftentimes on the bottom of the application or the explanation of the grant are keywords. And Gloria hit on this, but look at those keywords. If you don't have 70%, 80% of those keywords as part of your agency keywords, and it might be just worth having a meeting and saying, what do we do? Tweaking your mission statement, writing all these things down, putting that in your cloud or on, you know, in your files. You really need to have that to be able to tell the grantor what you do and what you will give them back on their investment. We will do this, we will do that. And it's very helpful. And the impact statement, besides being a clear description in your action statement, you have to make sure they know who to contact. So often we have received requests and we have absolutely no idea who the contact person is of the agency who we're collaborating with, because all of a sudden they need help with something, and you know, because of transparency, all this stuff is going out. They're like, oh, you can help us with whatever it is, clothing for work. And yes, we might be able to do that, but we don't even know who your agency is. And when I have to Google search and do all of that just because they're quickly, you know, emailing me 3 sentences, maybe you need to have 2 more sentences to say who you are, how to contact the right person, not to, you know, information at does not give me any assurances that it's not spam.
Good point. Good point. Okay, I'm gonna go to Dennis's question and maybe take the last 5 minutes this evening to just go around the panel and see if you have any additions to make. But Dennis, do you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question?
That's pretty simple question.
Yeah.
Issue about how do you structure the payment of the grant? Is it something that takes place after the full grant has been executed, or is it something that can be structured ahead of or with quarterly performance?
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends on the grant and on the grantor. You know, we make grants in 1 payment unless it's a larger one, and then we make it in 2. But I think that Susan and Bernice probably have very different responses. And I mean, I've had state grants and large foundation grants when I worked for nonprofits that would reimburse on a monthly or a quarterly basis based on expenses submitted. I just think it depends on the grant.
Yeah, and I concur with Laura because Collier County only provides grant funding on a reimbursement basis. So the agency has to outlay the funding initially, and then you're reimbursed either monthly or quarterly or however often you submit for reimbursement. Again, when you're working with Collier County government, it's not always really quick. So there's oftentimes some delays in getting reimbursed. And that's really tough for a lot of small nonprofits because you can't afford to carry $100,000 for 60 or 90 days, maybe, just depending on your particular situation. So that question is something you really need to know about going into the grant application process. If you're awarded a grant from Collier County, and you'll know that like in the spring of a year, also because it's either federal or state funding, those dollars are not available immediately. That you may have to wait 6 months until that fiscal year starts. Then you can begin your project, but you're outlaying funding and then submitting for reimbursement.
And when it comes to state and federal grants, you have to give them a schedule of drawdown. And somehow I'm an idiot savant with this. I don't know how I figured this out. But I've been doing it for 30 some years. But if it's a 4-year period, 48 months, or how many quarters, depends on what agency or what department, you have to give them how you're going to pull down money so they can set aside those dollars for a 4-year period. So you might only request 40% of all the funding the first quarter. Well, it sounds like a lot of money, but your startup costs, your initial outlay for interviewing, hiring, all of those types of costs, as well as leasing a space, etc. And then the other 60% go for the next 12 quarters, 13 quarters, depending on how it ends, because sometimes you have that last quarter to do a wrap up or 2 quarters to do a wrap up. So reading the grant and how they do the fiscal pull down, I call it pull down, release of funding, and your fiscal person, or might be you, might be 2, 3 people, and hello Duke, nice to see you, can easily manage that because you know how much you're going to have per quarter available to you. It doesn't mean you have to draw down all that money, but that's how they plan on having those funds available.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. I think we can open it up for questions now. If anyone has any questions, unmute and ask away. Okay, then I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to, first of all, just go around to each of the panelists in alphabetical order by last name. And starting with Susan, and just any final comments you have, anything that struck you that maybe we didn't cover, that now would be a good time to do that. So unmute. Unmute, okay.
Okay. I can't really think of anything specific, but I think this is really an important forum for folks that might want to venture for the first time into making application to, private foundation like the Community Foundation or to the county, Workforce Development Board, whoever it is. There's a lot of resources in our community. We're very, very fortunate in Southwest Florida to have a number of community foundations, a lot of local government agencies. So there are opportunities out there, whether you're involved with environmental groups, animal rights kinds of activities, whether you're involved in education, housing, whatever it may be. I think it's just a matter of finding an entity that you're a good fit for. And so as Laura and others were saying all along, both Gloria and Bernice, it's that communication. Introduce yourself to some entity that you read about in the local newspaper. You know, however you make those initial connections, whether you're doing some research and you're looking at 990s, you know, send an email, pick up the phone and make a cold call, because there's a lot of funding opportunities, especially in this part of Florida. And I think eventually you'll find some good fits for your organization.
Bernice?
Well, I just want to say one size doesn't fit all. Whether you're a small agency, you might be able to pull down big dollars from a funder because your action meets their action statement. Just like one size doesn't fit all for your impact statement or your program description, you need to be flexible and change. And as you write that and receive the grant funding, you also have to be flexible and let them know things are working, things aren't working, and you know, and work with your team. And if whoever the leader is of whatever service it is, know that they have backup. I've seen more grants not do well because one person puts in 100% and does not receive assistance, doesn't want help, whatever it is. It has to be a team effort, and at any given moment, the flexibility of your team contributes to the success of the program.
Cool. Gloria?
I just wanted to, if there's anyone out there that's really at the beginning steps of developing an organization and maybe they don't have their 501c3 yet, that there's some funders that actually provide seed money, meaning that they'll invest. If you have a really wonderful idea, a funder might invest in your idea and you know, help you get to the next step. And you know, will be invested in seeing your idea grow into a reality. So there's some funders that offer those types of grant opportunities. And then I would say that that, you know, year after year, as your organization grows, all the learning that happens, you know, to share with your funders, and that eventually you'll have the structures in place that will you know, help you turn requests around on a dime. You know, when COVID struck, RCMA was able to very quickly identify, you know, okay, well, what are we going to do for our families? And we had the project, you know, outlined. We're going to provide food, diapers, utility, rental assistance very quickly, you know, how broad is our scope? And so we had a goal of raising, I think, $1.5 million statewide to respond to our families' needs. And that's a really huge number. There was not going to be one funder that was going to be able to provide that for us. But we did have that project, you know, scope, and we were able to start kind of selling that to a lot of these organizations very quickly. So within 3 months, we were able to raise more than $500,000 just for that were directly going to the families in needs throughout the state. And that's really fast. And then the last piece was being able to have the structure to to spend that money down, which has already been said. You know, you don't want to, you'd be surprised. You don't want to get money and keep money. You want that money to be out there doing good in the community. So in times like these where, you know, things have been changing so quickly, so rapidly, organizations had to respond. These are great opportunities for collaborations and building those relationships in the midst of crisis. So with that, I'll stop. I know we could go on all night, but that's all.
And Laura, thank you for your...
You know, I'm actually interested in did all the participants have an opportunity to introduce themselves? Because I'm curious about some folks and where they're from and which organizations they're with. And Donna, do we have time to just very, very quickly for people?
I think we do. We usually do that as part of our meeting. We can...
No mission statement, no description, just where you work and if you're in Naples or Fort Myers or wherever.
Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you what, this is my screen that I have, and I think I'll start with Janine.
Just remember everyone to unmute yourselves.
Yeah, I think you can all unmute right now unless you have barking in the background.
All right.
Okay.
I'm Janine Hudak, and I'm working at the Jewish Federation of Greater Naples, and I'm an admin coordinator, and we do allocate funds, work on the grants, but I do a lot of different things, but yeah, we're right here in Naples.
Cool. Duke? Duke?
He's on his kayak.
I think he is. So unmute. There you go.
Unmute.
Yeah.
I'm Duke Vasey, and basically what I do is ecological work in County, and the most recent projects have been catchment areas or retention ponds, where we're trying to introduce or reintroduce, in most cases, natural function. For those of you, the English equivalent is we're trying to let the grass grow longer so the bugs have a place to live.
Cool.
In Naples.
Thank you. Riley?
Hi, everybody. I'm Riley Randolph. I'm the grants manager at Sukup Strategic Solutions here in Naples.
Cool. And then we have Terrence. Unmute. Unmute. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep, now we can.
Okay, I've in my past have worked for a few nonprofits, including the University of Iowa Foundation. I actually right now am in Iowa because I was working for an international consulting company and came back right before the emergency started. And I was starting a consulting company and everything sort of stopped. And I'm trying to learn this area. And you all have been very helpful in the meetings that I have attended here.
Cool, cool. Suzanne? Funding's Land? I think we had two Suzannes.
There are two of us. I'm not sure if my microphone is working.
It is.
It is.
I work for the University of Florida, IFAS, in the county extension office. And my programs are primarily nutrition, health, wellness, and I primarily work in Immokalee.
Okay, cool. Denise?
I'm a volunteer with the League of Women Voters of Collier County, like Ray, and we look for support for our voter services projects and a variety of other things that we do related to the environment and other advocacy programs.
Uh-oh, now my screen went, okay. Anne, I think you're next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Katzif. I'm a web designer and front-end developer in Naples. And I work with a lot of nonprofits. So that's why I attend these meetings, so I can share the information with my clients.
Then we'll jump to Ray.
Yes, my name being Ray Kalich. I'm the treasurer for both the Leagues of Women's Voters of Collier County and also for the Books for Collier Kids. And I just want to say thanks for all the support that we've gotten in the past from many of you.
Cool. And Brian?
Hello, everybody. Most of this group knows me from the orphanage in Haiti that I used to work with, called Place of Hope in Haiti. About 4 months ago, I stopped working there, and I'm now with the Legacy Imperative, which is based in Naples. I'm the managing director there, and our goal is to bridge the generational divide between boomers and the Z and millennial generation. Thanks for your conversation today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations to the new job, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you, Birgit.
Janelle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janelle Miley. I'm the owner of Global Strategies. We're a virtual accounting firm. We provide bookkeeping services to small businesses. But I'm also a licensed nonprofit consultant. So this information was great. It was great information that I can definitely pass on to some of my clients.
Cool. And Maren?
Hi, I'm Ryan Hilgendorf with Goodwill Industries of Southwest Florida. It's a nonprofit helping the disadvantaged and the disabled in 5 counties in Southwest Florida. Hi, everybody.
Good to see you again, man.
It's so fun when people react on the screen.
I know. I love your background there.
Yeah, except I'm becoming one with the roseate spoonbill and the graphic. It's my 20th century acceptable plumey cat.
Cool, cool. Shannon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Brownrigg, and I'm a little north of you guys. I'm from Ontario, Canada.
Cool.
I'm with the Registered Veterinary Technologists and Technicians of Canada, and I'm looking to expand our non-dues revenue. So whether it's Canadian or American, the grant writing is all very similar. So I really appreciate your feedback and suggestions today. It's been really helpful. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. And Mark.
Well, he might not be listening.
Yeah. He may not be listening, or he's on a phone call. Did I miss anyone? Because halfway through, my screen changed. So I think I caught everyone.
All right.
Donna,
Well,
can I do one last thing? As I always offer to assist people. I have a great executive director who feels anytime we bring money into our area, that means jobs. And since we're workforce, it's very important to us. But if anybody needs assistance, I'll be on the resource page. I'm helping FSW with a federal grant currently and a few other nonprofits. But if you don't have a proofreader, I can proofread or have somebody else who is 12 years of Catholic school, and she does get the red pen out, and she's vicious, and I love that about her. But we can be a resource for you, so don't hesitate. It might not be immediate, but we can help you with several processes to get yourself ready for grants, writing as well as receiving those funds.
Cool. Cool. Well, thank you all. I think this has been a great panel. Lots of good information. And I'll turn it back over to Birgit to close the meeting. Oh, next month we are volunteer management software. So join us on October, is it the 6th? October 6th, and we'll be virtual again. So,
Yes, and I have two announcements. One is in the chat window. If you hop over there and just click on the last link that I shared, we do it a little bit differently. We are not getting a whole lot of feedback from our session evaluation, so I thought sharing it in the meeting in the last few minutes gets maybe people to fill it out, because it's it's at your fingertips on your mouse click. Also, there's the announcement came from TechSoup that they are switching off a meetup at the end of the year. So if you all, or some of you, RSVP to our meetup and you are not connected to our other site, I would strongly hope that you will come over to n10.org and give us your email address. You don't have to create an account. You're just your name and email address, and then you get notifications of our new events as you did on Meetup. But this is now the new system. We started it in January. N10 is also a sponsor of our meeting when we do in-person meetings. So Suzanne Fundingsland is now kind of overwhelmed with birds. Well, anyway. And so N10 is also funding our pizza or other food that we have in the in-person meetings. So they also provide us with a website. These are the two things. So switch over from Meetup to local.n10.org, Tech for Good, Southwest Florida. Yeah, and Donna already mentioned October 6th, the volunteer management software and logistics, and November 3rd is, the title is a nice question: do I need a professional tech or can I do it myself? And then December 1, we hope to have a holiday party. It might still be a virtual one. So I shared earlier the link to our video channel because the Zoom does, when the meeting is over, Zoom does some kind of stuff with the video, and I might head over to dinner and not get to it until tomorrow. So if you are part of our, join us on the video channel, then you will see when we're on, when the video is online. So, and I'm gonna share this link again on the chat window. But fill out the evaluation form, please.
Yes.
All right, it was so good to see everybody and meet you for the first time. Some of you were the first time, some of you was a long time coming. And wish you all stay well, be healthy, and wash your hands.
Wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, take care. Don't forget the session evaluation.
All right, we promise.
All right, thank you.
Oh, man. I thought that went really, really well.
Oh, yeah, it was really fantastic, yeah.
That's a great information.
So, but I'm ending the meeting now.
Okay.
So everybody,
Bye.
bye.